There comes a strange season in your life when nothing is technically wrong, yet nothing feels right either. You wake up, you do what needs to be done, you check the boxes. But somewhere beneath the surface, you can feel it. A quiet hum of something unresolved, something you cannot name. And here is what almost no one tells you. That numbness, that fog, that strange stillness, it is not evidence that you are failing. It is the first whisper that your entire system is preparing to rearrange itself. You see, most people believe breakthroughs arrive like explosions, loud, sudden, unmistakable. But Carl Jung, the man who mapped the hidden architecture of the human psyche, understood something different. He knew that the deepest transformations do not announce themselves with fireworks. They creep in through the cracks you did not know existed. They arrive as confusion, as hesitation, as the quiet collapse of habits you thought were permanent. And by the time you feel the ground shifting beneath you, you are already far closer to becoming someone new than you ever realized. In this video, we are going to walk through 7 subtle signals, 7 quiet fractures in your old self that prove you are standing on the edge of a breakthrough. Not next year, not someday, right now. And by the time you recognize them, you will never see your confusion the same way again. Are you ready to see what has been hiding in plain sight? Part 1. The old map stops working. Let me describe something and see if it lands. You keep doing what has always worked. You wake at the same hour. You follow the same routines. You apply the same effort that once moved mountains. But lately nothing changes. Not because you are lazy. Not because you have lost your drive. But because the results have simply stopped appearing. You complete the task. You close the tab. You cross the item off your list, and yet, the mountain remains exactly where it was. Have you ever worked harder than ever before, only to feel like you are running on a treadmill that is connected to nothing? This is not a malfunction. This is the first signal. Jung once wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Think about that. When your old methods stop working, your mind is not punishing you. It is revealing that you have outgrown the map you were using. The territory beneath your feet has changed. But you are still walking the old route. I once spoke with a man, let us call him Daniel, who spent 15 years building his identity around discipline. Every morning at 5 a.m., every spreadsheet color-coded, every decision analyzed, and for a decade that engine carried him far. But then came a year when nothing moved. He worked longer, he planned harder, he optimized every variable he could touch, and yet his life sat motionless like a photograph. What Daniel did not understand yet was that his discipline had become a cage. The very system that built his world had turned into the walls of his prison. Not because discipline is bad, but because he was no longer the same man who built that system. Can you see it? The tool that once set you free can become the lock that holds you, if you refuse to see that you have changed. Think of it this way. Imagine you have a key that has opened your front door 10,000 times. One day you insert it, turn it exactly as always, and nothing happens. You try again, harder, faster, 3 more times. The lock does not care how hard you try. The lock is not broken. You are standing at the wrong door. The old key was never meant to open what comes next. So if you are in that strange space where everything familiar feels hollow, where your best efforts produce nothing but exhaustion, pause. Do not push harder. Do not optimize more. Recognize this for what it is. Proof that you are no longer where you used to be. And that is not a problem. That is the first whisper of your breakthrough. Part 2. The things you buried begin to breathe. When the old methods stop working, something else begins. Something quieter, stranger, and often unsettling. Things you did not invite start showing up. A memory you had not visited in years. A dream that repeats itself like a scratched record. A reaction that explodes from nowhere when someone says something ordinary. You did not create these things. You cannot explain them. And you definitely cannot control them. Have you ever felt a wave of emotion rise up from nowhere? No trigger, no warning. And wondered where on earth it came from? This is not a glitch in your software. This is the second signal. Jung called this the return of the repressed. He understood that what you push into the basement of your mind does not vanish. It waits. It breathes. It grows roots in the dark. And when you finally have enough space, when the old structures have weakened just enough, those buried pieces climb the stairs and knock on your door. Not to punish you, to be seen. There is an old Greek story that captures this perfectly. Persephone does not choose to descend into the underworld. She is taken. And yet, her descent changes everything, because once she returns, she is no longer only a daughter of spring. She becomes something else, someone who has seen the dark and come back. What if the things rising up inside you right now are not enemies? What if they are messengers? Imagine a lake at midnight. During the day, you see only the surface, calm, clear, manageable. But at night, when the light changes, you begin to see what lives beneath. Movement, shapes, depths you never knew existed. The lake has not changed. Your ability to see has. And that is exactly what is happening inside you right now. The anger that surprises you, the sadness that visits without invitation, the strange longing you cannot name. These are not signs that you are breaking. These are signs that your container has grown large enough to finally hold what you have been avoiding for years. So here is what matters. Do not try to shut them down. Do not medicate them away. And do not rush to understand them immediately. Just let them be there. Let them breathe. Because what is surfacing is not here to destroy you. It is here to complete you. And if something in you recognizes this, if you feel that quiet nod inside, leave the word awake in the comments. Not for me, for yourself. To mark the moment you stopped running. Part 3. The story you told yourself starts to crack now. Something deeper begins to shift. Not just your habits, not just your buried emotions, but the very story you have been telling yourself about who you are. You know the story. I am the responsible one. I am the person who never gets angry. I am the one who always knows what to do. I am logical. I am strong. I am the fixer. These sentences have held your world together for years. They gave you identity. They gave you certainty. They gave you a script to follow when life got confusing. But what happens when those sentences stop feeling true? This is the third signal. And it is one of the most disorienting experiences a human being can go through. A woman named Sarah once wrote to me about this exact phase. For 30 years, she had built her entire identity around being the calm one. In every conflict, she was the mediator. In every crisis, she was the steady hand. Her family called her the Rock, and she wore that title like a medal until one day, she snapped at her child over something trivial. Then, a week later, she cried in the grocery store parking lot for no reason. Then, she started questioning decisions she had never questioned before. Sarah looked in the mirror and did not recognize the woman staring back. And she thought something was wrong with her. But nothing was wrong. She was simply outgrowing the costume she had been wearing for 3 decades. Here's what neuroscience teaches us. Your brain does not hold a fixed self. It holds a constantly updated map of who you think you are, based on past memories and experiences. When new experiences no longer fit the map becomes unstable. It cracks, it breaks, and that feels terrifying. But it is also the only way the map can expand. Jung said the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Notice he did not say to discover who you already are. He said to become. That is a process, a continuous shedding, a series of small deaths. What if the person you thought you were was never the whole truth, only the version that was safe enough to show? Think about an old building. For decades it stands. The walls hold. The roof stays dry. Everyone believes it is solid. But then, one day a crack appears in the foundation, not because the building is weak, but because the ground beneath it has shifted. The building is not failing. It is being prepared for an expansion it never knew it needed. So if you find yourself unsure of who you are anymore, if the labels you once wore feel like costumes that no longer fit, if you cannot say I am always like this with the same conviction you once had, celebrate that. Not because confusion is fun, but because the collapse of your old story is the only way a truer story can be written. Part 4. The automatic response disappears. When your identity begins to crack, something very practical changes in your daily life. The way you talk to people, the way you react, the rhythm of your conversations. All of it begins to slow down in ways you did not expect. Before, someone would say something, and your response would appear instantly, almost before you thought about it. A joke, a deflection, a piece of advice, a defensive reaction, automatic, fast, familiar. But now there is a pause, a strange, awkward, beautiful pause. You hear the words, you understand what was said, but the old response does not come. It is like reaching for a tool on your belt and finding the pocket empty. Have you noticed yourself hesitating lately? Not because you are confused, but because the old reaction simply refuses to show up? This is the fourth signal, and it is subtle enough that most people miss it entirely. I knew a man named James who was famous among his friends for always having an answer. Always. Someone shared a problem. James had a solution. Someone expressed pain. James had a perspective. He was not trying to be annoying. He genuinely believed that helping meant fixing. And for 20 years, that pattern ran on autopilot. Then, something shifted. A friend shared a difficult story, and James opened his mouth. But nothing came out, not because he was stunned, but because the fixer response simply did not arrive. In its place was silence, and in that silence, something new appeared. What James discovered was that his automatic responses had been a shield. As long as he was fixing, he never had to feel. As long as he was advising, he never had to sit in the discomfort of someone else's pain. The pause was not a failure of social skill. It was the first moment in 20 years that he was actually present, actually listening, actually seeing the person in front of him rather than the problem he could solve. Here is a metaphor that might land. Imagine you have walked the same path to work 10,000 times. Your feet know every crack in the sidewalk. You could make the trip asleep. But one morning, you notice a flower growing through a crack you have never seen before. You stop. Not because you forgot the way, but because something new has entered your field of vision. The path is the same, but you are no longer walking on autopilot. Jung once said the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Most people read that as emotional advice, but it is not. It is a description of what happens when your automatic defenses finally relax. When you stop performing the version of yourself that kept you safe. When you allow the pause, and in that pause, you are no longer reacting. You are responding. And those two things are worlds apart. So if you have noticed yourself speaking less, if you have noticed longer silences in your conversations, if you feel like you are listening more and fixing less, do not mistake this for social anxiety or awkwardness. This is your nervous system learning a new rhythm. This is the breakthrough arriving not as an explosion, but as a breath. And if you feel this happening, if you recognize that you are no longer just reacting to life, press like on this video. Not for me. As a quiet acknowledgement to yourself that you are waking up. Part 5. The pieces begin to connect. As your reactions slow down and your presence deepens, something else shifts, something almost magical. The random events of your life no longer feel random. A book falls into your hands at exactly the right moment. A stranger says exactly what you needed to hear. A memory surfaces that suddenly explains a pattern you have been trapped in for years. You are not forcing these connections. You are not imagining them. They are simply appearing. Have you noticed lately that life feels less like chaos and more like a conversation, even if you cannot yet understand the language? This is the fifth signal, and it is one of the most beautiful signs that a breakthrough is near. Steve Jobs once shared a story that captures this perfectly. In college, he dropped in on a calligraphy class. No practical reason, no career plan. He was just curious. It seemed like a completely random detour. 10 years later, when he was designing the first Macintosh computer, that calligraphy class became the foundation for every font on every personal computer you have ever used. He said you can only connect the dots looking backward. Forward, they just look like chaos. That is what is happening to you right now. The scattered pieces of your life are not scattered at all. They are arranging themselves into a pattern your conscious mind cannot yet see. But something deeper in you can feel it. The late-night conversation that planted a seed. The failure that closed one door but aimed you toward another. The pain that taught you something no success ever could. Jung called this synchronicity, meaningful coincidence, that is not random but also not caused by anything physical. He said synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see. Notice that. It is not that the world changes. It is that your eyes change. What if the chaos you are experiencing right now is actually order, in a language you have not yet learned to read? Think about a puzzle. When you first dump all the pieces on the table, it looks like noise. Blue here, red there, a corner of something, an edge of nothing. But as you begin to assemble it, the noise becomes a picture. The pieces have not changed. Your ability to see how they fit together has. And that is exactly what is happening in your life right now. That job you lost, that relationship that ended, that dream that died. Those are not random tragedies. They are pieces. And you are finally far enough along the path to begin seeing how they connect. So if you have started noticing strange coincidences, if you keep encountering the same number, the same message, the same theme, if life feels less like a series of accidents and more like a slow reveal, trust that. Your perception is not tricking you. Your perception is expanding, and that expansion is one of the clearest signs that you are moving very close to something you have never seen before. Part 6. Two voices speak at once. Now we arrive at a phase that feels like contradiction. You will notice something strange inside yourself. One part of you wants to stay. Another part wants to leave. One part wants the familiar path. Another part cannot stand the thought of walking it one more time. And here is what makes this phase so disorienting. Both voices are real. Both are true. And neither is going to disappear. This is not indecision. This is not weakness. This is the sixth signal. Have you felt torn lately, not between right and wrong, but between two versions of yourself that both feel authentic? I once worked with a man named Marcus who described this perfectly. Every morning, he would wake up and follow his old routine. Coffee, news, emails, the same route to work, the same lunch spot, but somewhere around 10 a.m. a second voice would start whispering, "What if you drove the other way today? What if you called that old friend? What if you just sat in silence for 10 minutes? He was not depressed. He was not confused. He was two people at once, the man he had been and the man he was becoming, and the discomfort he felt was not a problem to solve. It was the friction of growth. Jung wrote extensively about the tension of opposites. He believed that no real consciousness emerges without two opposing forces pulling against each other. Think about a bow and arrow. The arrow only flies because the bowstring is pulled in two directions at once. The tension is not a flaw. The tension is the engine. What if the war inside your head is not a sign that you are broken, but proof that you are finally holding more than one truth at the same time? Imagine listening to two songs at once. One is familiar, the song of your old life. The other is unfamiliar, the song of what is coming. At first it sounds like noise. Your brain tries to focus on one, but the other keeps bleeding through. But if you stay with it long enough, something shifts. You stop trying to separate them. You start hearing the harmony, not because the songs have changed, but because your ear has learned to listen differently. That is where you are right now. You are learning to hold contradiction. You are learning that you can love your old life and still outgrow it. You can appreciate what worked and still admit it no longer works. You can honor who you were without staying that person forever. And that ability to hold two truths at once is not confusion. It is maturity. It is the mind expanding beyond the need for simple answers. So if you feel torn, if you wake up every day pulled in two directions, if you cannot decide whether to hold on or let go, stop trying to decide. Both are real. Both are valid. And the breakthrough does not come when you choose one. It comes when you learn to stand in the middle and let the tension teach you. And if you have ever felt this, that strange coexistence of two opposing forces inside you, share your story in the comments. Not a perfect story, just a real one. Because someone else is standing in that same tension right now, and your words might be the mirror they need. Part 7. The moment of choice. And now we arrive at the edge. The final signal. The moment when all the confusion, all the strange feelings, all the internal shifts boil down to one simple question. Do you go back to what is familiar, or do you step forward into what is not yet clear? This is the seventh signal, and unlike the others, this one does not happen to you. This one requires something from you. Have you been standing at a threshold lately, not sure what is on the other side, but absolutely sure you cannot stay where you are? Let me tell you about a woman named Elena. She had spent 17 years in the same career. Good pay, respectable title, nice office with a window. And somewhere along the way, she stopped feeling anything about it. Not hate, not passion, just nothing. The work got done. The checks cleared. But every morning, she felt a tiny death when her alarm went off. One day, she was driving to work on autopilot. Same route, same radio station, same coffee order. And she missed her exit. Not because she was distracted, because some deeper part of her simply refused to turn. She sat on the shoulder of the road for 20 minutes, and in that silence she realized something. She had been waiting for permission to leave, permission that was never coming. No one was going to tap her on the shoulder and say, "Elena, your suffering has been sufficiently documented. You may now pursue meaning." The only permission she needed was her own. Paul McCartney wrote a song that contains one of the most profound lines ever recorded. "Let it be. There will be an answer. Let it be." Most people hear that as passive surrender. But it is not. It is active trust. It is the willingness to move forward without knowing the whole path. Because here is the truth about breakthroughs. They do not happen when everything becomes clear. They happen the moment you decide to move, even when nothing is clear. Jung said that in all chaos there is a cosmos, and in all disorder a secret order. That is not a platitude. That is a description of reality from someone who spent a lifetime mapping the human psyche. The order is already there. You do not have to create it. You only have to step into it. What if the only thing separating you from your breakthrough is not more information, more certainty, or more preparation, but simply the courage to take one step before you can see the whole staircase? You can wait. You can wait until you are sure. You can wait until the fear disappears, until the bank account is fuller, until the kids are older, until you have read one more book, watched one more video, taken one more course. But waiting is also a choice. And it is the choice that keeps you exactly where you are. So here is what I need you to hear. The signs are already here. You have felt them. The old methods failing, the buried things surfacing, the old story cracking, the automatic responses disappearing, the pieces connecting, the two voices speaking. You are not waiting for a breakthrough. You are standing in the middle of one. The only question left is whether you will recognize it and step forward. Conclusion. Breakthroughs do not arrive the way we imagine. They do not come with trumpets and banners. They come as confusion, as exhaustion, as the strange sense that you have outgrown a life you once loved. They come as the collapse of habits that once protected you, as the surfacing of pain you thought you had buried forever, as the strange realization that you are no longer sure who you are. Every signal we have walked through today is not a sign that you are broken. They are proof that your system is working exactly as it should. Your psyche is not trying to punish you. It is trying to expand you. And the discomfort you feel is not an enemy. It is the sound of a cage door opening. What if everything you have been calling stuck or lost or confused has actually been the slow, necessary undoing of a version of you that was never meant to last? You do not need to become someone new through force and effort. That process began long before you noticed it. Your only job now is to stop getting in the way. To stop running back to the old map, to stop silencing the voices rising from below, to stop pretending the old story still fits. The breakthrough is not ahead of you, it is inside you. And it has already begun. If this video shifted something in you, even slightly, share it with one person who is standing in their own quiet confusion, not because you have answers for them, but because the greatest gift we can give each other is the simple acknowledgement, you are not alone in this. And if you want to go deeper on this journey, subscribe and turn on notifications, because we are not here to turn you into someone else. We are here to help you stop missing the person you have always been. You may have noticed there were no ads in this video. YouTube has temporarily restricted monetization on this channel. But from the beginning, what we have pursued was never about numbers. It was about the quiet moments when someone, somewhere, begins to understand themselves more deeply. We will continue bringing this work to the people who need it, whether the algorithms reward us or not. If what you heard today touched you, and you want this journey to continue reaching, You can support us through the link in the description. Thank you for staying until the very end. Thank you for walking this path with us. And thank you for being brave enough to stand in the not knowing. Because that